Hello everybody and welcome back to the Smite Challenger Circuit qualifier rounds. We're getting ready to go into set number 3 of the day with a familiar name, with some familiar names on that team in the Sturdy Artisans, and maybe some unfamiliar ones. Or on the opposite side, it's ET. Before we get to that, my name is J Mac Tucker. With me is Gore Miser, joining me on the desk one more time and joining me for the set. It should be a fun one. We got some big names on the side of Sturdy Artisans, specifically a team name that we know with team players on that team that we know. But before we get into the discussion there, Gore, let's take a look at the bracket and the schedule, see what you may have missed today, what you still have to look forward to today, and the rest of our week. We had Vamps and a little less Pog earlier on, 2-0 for the Vamps. Great Gentlemen and Jazzy Jaguars, 2-0 for Great Gentlemen. Those two teams will face off on the upper end of the bracket. Now we got Sturdy Artisans and ET, and then after that, Leoncitos and DDD will face off for their respective teams, and then the winner of both of those will face off later on.
I'm excited to watch pretty much everything that's going on in NA. Again, a lot of good names that are going to show up as well on Sunday that I'm really excited to be able to see when they go up against each other. But this one's a very fun one for me. I like Sturdy Artisans. They were a very, very successful team and very knowledgeable team last year, so I expect to see a lot of good play from them.
A lot of spicy things from this team, too, especially when you have a player like Sino in the jungle who refuses to play assassins in the jungle. I say that and we immediately go to a Thanatos clip, so that doesn't really help my point here. But this is a guy who is coming out with the Chungle, Chalk Jungle, bringing out E-Set Jungle was probably the most popular and probably most banned pick of all of his. This is a team that you never know what you're going to get with when it comes to some of the individual players. But now, losing Crimson as he's moved over to the team that we talked about earlier with the Vamps, they had to pick up a new mid laner. Well, who did they pick up? Moswall.
You know what? That's not a bad player to pick up there, Jay.
No?
I think that's a pretty... I don't know if I... You know what? I think I can say it's an upgrade. Crimson's a great mid laner. Moswall has accomplished some wild things in his career, it would turn out. And being able to put them in the middle of this team that has, Griff, who we saw perform insanely well last year, as well as Gino. Sino, who is very similar to Moswall, had a very, very successful career, and of course, Relentless one. I think that this just feels like just an absolute powerhouse of a team that you have to be worried about. And I think that really does create an interesting conversation, because even though, unfortunately, as you can see here, Moswall had been playing on a team that didn't quite make it into the SPL, you do have to think that this is a team that, given their history in the SEC last year, and given the competitive history of a lot of these players, it's going to be a really, really uphill battle for any team they have to go against.
Yeah, and especially for a team like ET, a team that we don't, at least me personally, I don't really have a whole lot of data on this team specifically. I do recognize the name Soul Reaper coming from the SCL quite some time ago, but outside of that, a fairly unknown roster as far as the upper competitive echelon is concerned. Shootable Caddy, Soul Reaper, Happen, and Lil Richie rounding out this ET roster, and kind of going up against this talent. I mean, yes, we talk about how hard it is for teams to face off against Sturdy Artisans in general, especially with their new additions here to Moswall.
Yeah.
But I think some mix-up here and having some veteran talent in that mid lane, which is where a lot of kind of pivot points can be shown in a lot of these games.
And you need veteran talent. Like, here's how I'm going to frame it. You need that talent. I'm happy they have it in mid lane, because you're going up against, again, Sino and Moswall, who won Worlds together, dude. Like, it's just, it is going to be an experience, I think, for ET to have to deal with this, because it does come down to it. We've actually seen a lot of times, sometimes you get powerhouse teams that maybe the shot calling isn't exactly what you want, things like that. We'll have to see what exactly Sturdy Artisans have to offer, but you could theoretically take them apart on good team play, good map playability. What is that? The macro that you can play at the top end, where you're just reading the map a little bit better, playing the map a little bit better. And so I'm interested to see how ET are going to tackle this, because like you said, when you have a bunch of names, well, I recognize the name Lil Richie, but not as like a player. So that's a completely different conversation. But I think that this is a team that can really show up and show us what they have to offer.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one here for ET, an uphill battle to say the least. So let's get right into picks and bans and see how everything lined out here in game number 1. Relentless one over in the solo lane. I think kind of the solo is something to talk about specifically because it's had probably one of the biggest dynamic changes to its lane. Beforehand, it was like Nike, Achilles, and then a few Guardians thrown in there, splash like the RTO and whatnot, Cthulhu for a short time. Odin has also been kind of a namesake. But now with this new meta, we've been seeing a lot more of the auto attack-centric warriors, things like Bellona, Amaterasu. Gilgamesh just kind of popped his way in there now. Relentless One, I kind of know him more so specifically for Camazot's play to say more than anything else. With nerfs to Camazot's, Gore, do you think maybe we see still some other assassins or other warriors kind of take Relentless One's spot here?
Well, we've seen like Kleena flexing over into the solo lane a little bit, and it's becoming a little bit more prevalent. I feel like every single week we watch, because like originally it was like, okay, well Ducky's playing it on the Valks, we'll see is this just the case. We've seen a lot of Bastet over there, so honestly, this is a toss-up. This could very well be Cyno's pick, but this could also easily go over to Relentless One and slot in really well. And so having those picks, like you said, those assassins that are kind of secondary to where your Bellonas, your Amaterasus, etc. are getting picked up, I think it's going to be interesting. And if Sturdy Artisans lock this in for solo, then we have seen it be widely successful today already. It's something that they might need to be worried about if you're shootable, which is the name of a player.
Right. Right, that's the solo.
I want to make sure that's out there.
Clarify that, yeah,
not just describing
shootable is the solo for ET. We will double clarify that here. Persephone Nemesis on the side of ET. Good movie. Haven't seen that in such a long time, by the way. Bastet, though, does get that first pick option for the Sturdy Artisans. You talked about how it could be Cyno's pick. But if we know Cyno, this probably isn't his pick. I'm going to imagine this
I thought you were going to pivot hard and be
one.
like, if we know Cyno, that means this is going to end up somehow being a Hell Jungle. Because we know Cyno.
Don't put that evil out here, Gord.
Moswell's on the team. Moswell's playing
this is 100% got to be Moswell's Hell. Kuzenbo, though, brings an interesting point up in here, because we've pretty much only, up until just very recently, in like the last year or so, seen Kuzenbo support, and mostly out of like Neilma, kind of more than anything the SPL side. But Kuzenbo solo, you think there's some potential viability we might see for that here?
I guess it depends on the matchup. Like, if I'm locking it in top 3, I don't think I'm locking it in solo. But knowing that you have that flexibility does shake it up. Like, he's not my instant go-to, but like I think I could see it if you knew. I'm trying to think of like good counter matchups where I'm like, yes, Kuzenbo's who I want. But like, there's definitely a world where it can exist. I'm not sure I'd go so far as to say that this one's it, but I will say that there is definitely a world where it can happen.
There is a sneaky thought in the back of my mind right now that's saying that this is going to be Kuzenbo jungle. Just because it's Cyno. Because it's Cyno.
Well, see, that's the problem. So here's the thing. They've locked in 3 gods, and each one of them we said, well, Cyno could probably play.
I think Hell's the only one that I can almost definitively say no to. And with a double Hunter lock-in, potential here out of Sturdy Artisans, this might be going back. I think Cyno did a Scotty jungle a while back in the SCC. I think that was like during phase 3.
All right, I'm gonna make this
year.
if they lock these 2 in, I'm gonna make this the wildest comp I can right here. It's not. This is not for accuracy. This is.
I am prepared.
Oh, never mind. They're gonna. I was gonna say double Hunter duo lane. Right, do a Scotty Chiron duo lane, Kuzenbo solo.
Oh no, they did.
Bastet mid, and then throw Hell in the jungle, and then it's just for giggles.
I have no clue.
Will that team win you games? Maybe in casuals.
I think I can only definitively say where Hell and Chiron are going, and that's mid and Hunter, respectively. Mid and dual lane carry, respectively.
Chiron could probably jungle pretty well.
I've never tried Chiron jungle. Medusa jungle is fun. That one I will say.
You've played Medusa jungle in playtests.
I did, and I popped off. I did some big damage during those playtests with that god. That is a fun god to play in jungle. But because we have the Nemesis locked in, pretty much one of the few assassins in our current meta that's actually a definitive jungle pick.
It's very easy. So ignore Sturdy Artisans. Look at ET. Persephone's going to go mid. You got Nemesis jungle. That's a really good 2 combo in terms of damage output, things like that. Bacchus Medusa, we saw that earlier today. Can be really aggressive in the duo lane. I don't know if ET are going to be popping Frenzy at 30 seconds and jumping in. And then, of course, Cerberus. Cerberus is just, like, classic. Right? He doesn't necessarily, like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be as dry with this as possible. He's not exactly, like, top end, I'm locking him in because he's going to dominate the lane, but he's got a good stun, he's got good sustain, he's got good CC and good team fight presence. Like, he just exists well in the world, and as long as you play him well, he should be able to stand up to it. In lane, if I'm matching him up, I'm going to assume against a Bastet. That might be kind of easy for him early on, maybe difficult for him depending on how much damage he can output.
We are ready to go into game number 1 between Sturdy Artisans and ET. I just got to know where the Sturdy Artisans draft
If it is
going.
a double hunter duo lane, I'm going to freak out.
No, it is
going
to be Sino going on the Scotty, so he's bringing it back one more time. The Relentless one, that means it will be him on the Bastet, and then Gino taking the Kuzenbo into support. Looked like we were potentially maybe going to see an invade there, but instead, no, it's just some wards being dropped down, or just some movement across the board at the very least here at the Sturdy Artisans team. So everything kind of just, I guess I can say, it kind of pans out to being normal, except the fact that we have a Scotty jungle. That's not normal, that's just Sino.
Yeah, that's it's just Sino. Who knows? Maybe somebody else will hear this and decide to run it sometime this week.
Not in my game,
next week.
please.
Definitely, exclusively in your games. Only lock in Scotty jungle if you see J-Mac Tucker in the lobby. No, wait, here's the thing that I think really consider with this pick. Also, they're doing the start again where you know, the solo laners hanging out with the jungler, so they're going to get all the back camps. A lot of experience. You split the red between the hunter and the mid. This is something we were playing it not too long ago, like in playtest, and then I got really frustrated because every time I tried to do it in casuals, I got told I was playing the game wrong because I was like, no, you're supposed to be somewhere else, dude.
Right. So here's the thing. You know,
it's a lot of experience early on.
Yeah, I mean, you get a
lot.
lot.
Look at that, Griff's level 2.
You get a lot there. You definitely get some pressure towards your solo lane, and that's something, you know, like you said, we tested this, and this was this was like as 9.1 was still coming out, we were doing tests on stuff like this, and this is a start that we started running here. And then Coach Satadragon actually messaged me and said that this 2v2 solo thing is something that he made, but it's something that we practiced before, so I kind of want to take credit away from him and maybe take some life bar here off of Happen. A lot of damage by Gino and Griff, the Chiron Kuzenbo duo lane, getting the upper hand over this Bacchus Medusa, which was such a dominant duo in game number 1 that we had.
Yeah, and honestly, it's interesting to see the fact that it's falling behind a little bit. I think a lot of that, Kuzenbo can be just as aggressive. Chiron has decent early game damage as well, so it's a good bounce back. I'm really surprised how well Sino, I mean, you have to think about the fact that, you know, Nemesis isn't necessarily known as like an early game boxer. But the fact that Sino's applying as much pressure as Sino is in this jungle is not necessarily a good sign for ET. It's opening up a lot of opportunities. You have an assassin in the solo lane who's already a level up. Things like that can really spiral out of control in terms of damage and team fight. And Sino's just kind of stopping Caddy from getting anywhere near these camps. So you manage to get not only all of your back camps in that initial run, you clear the wave, push them under the tower, then go in for an invade on 2 of their experience camps. Life's good if you're Sino right now.
Life's not good if you're Richie, though. He gets pushed through the entire wave by Gino, and that's the strength that Kuzenbo can offer early on. But now Caddy making a rotation over, maybe waiting to see if Gino or Griff were going to step a little further forward, but instead they will not. They'll go over to this now lone Alpha Harpy inside this giant pit. And that will be taken down by Sturdy Artisans. Happen, though, dives in. Sino gets caught by a Caddy in the midst of the jungle. It's a 2v2 a duo, a 2v1 in the jungle. The first blood goes over to Caddy. Sino goes down, and Happen manages to get away for now. Moswell just a little late on the rotation to help out. Maybe he's the one in danger. Gets a heal, gets a nice little cleanse to get himself through. Moswell will be fine for now.
And Moswell, this is something that you have to remember with Hell. And admittedly, we'll be losing that red buff, so it might be a little more difficult to show off over the next couple of seconds. But realistically, still does a lot of damage early on, right? Maybe not the most at the top end of mages, but you can hit pretty hard. Your mana does take a huge chunk every single time. But you have to watch. Again, this you called it exactly what it was. Sino just gets kind of caught out here, slowed down initially. Scotty is not known for her capabilities of movement unless you have your ice to throw down that gives you a little bit of a move speed buff if you're on a way, but that's perfect for a Nemesis who has double dash and a slow. She's just going to be able to stick to you. Sino's going to have to be worried about that exact scenario throughout the rest of this game.
Yeah, the ice is really the only safe.
And he's on their side of the jungle anyway.
Yeah, so remember when we said that's just Sino things whenever it comes to his pick? That's also his playstyle. The back camp bandit, back in full force here in Season 9. Nothing will change with Sino, not his picks and not his playstyle.
And I love, again, the aggression. Relentless one uses his ult, Sino uses his ult. I'm actually surprised Shootable just stays alive there. It's impressive from them to be able to maintain that. Did have to use beads, did have to use their ult in order to get all that CC and stay there, but at any point, if you're slowing down just a little bit of what Sturdy Artisans are capable of, then I think you're opening a lot more avenues for success here. You've got your jungler with First Blood. You actually have a little bit of an experience lead if you're shootable here as well. So you really transition that conversation from what it was earlier on. Earlier on, it was Sino and Relentless One just at your tower line causing trouble. Now they're still kind of at the tower line, but they're not causing you that much trouble.
Now, and even with that First Blood going over to ET, the gold is still up here for Sturdy Artisans. A lot of that can probably be a testament to how much, well, Sino has been in the enemy jungle this game as compared to his own at this point. I mean, he gets caught out walking around the enemy red buff and over towards there. Gino, now on this right side of the map, gets a nice push up against Caddy, but Caddy's got the double dash. That'll get them back to the safety of the Tier 1 tower. Blue buff does get invaded and stolen, and now it's a 3v3 on this right side, but the Sturdy Artisans don't want the fight. They got the buff. That was the important part for them. And they're going to make their way out immediately.
I'm always impressed by this. Whenever a buff, I die trying to pick that buff up. The fact that they pull back when they do, like, that's the only difference. Relentless One, if he turns around even for a second to pick that up with the rotations from ET, that's an easy pick onto the Bastet. Even if Leap comes off cooldown, it's just so much easier to lock them down and kind of control that position. But just going in, getting the experience, and more importantly, stopping shootable from having it, gives you more lane sustain than what you're going to see out of the other side.
Soul Reaper eating a ton of damage from Moswell here. That dark stance on the Hell really showing what kind of early DPS it can put out, especially with the Celestial Legion Helm. Early pickup here by Moswell. We saw it get very popular during the SPL qualifiers. Now we're seeing it here again in the SEC qualifiers. Big ultimate out of the mid laner just off the mark, and Moswell will be the one to punish. Caddy gets picked up by the cat, dropped down, but not enough damage. Moswell wants it, will get it with the light stance 1, a double kill for the mid lane Hell.
Relentless One gets stunned out, though. Shootable's just in a bad spot.
Ooh, Gino finds him with the Kappa under the tower and puts a third kill up now for Sturdy Artisans.
That is a great pickup. Griff, though, gets taken down. Lil Richie going to be flexing on him in the lane there. That is, I mean, just back and forth across the map. But I think a good shine, yeah, for Lil Richie over there, being able to find something. Does cost his ult, and admittedly Beads and ult are still up there for Griff. So maybe some possibilities in the future to turn things around that otherwise would have been unsafe. But ultimately in mid lane you get to see the strings of having this Hell. And we saw this during the placements earlier this year. It just comes down to what Moswell's presence is on this Hell. Granted, out-of-combat healing, not that great right now, right? And admittedly done so because of how just oppressive it was throughout not only last year, but realistically Season 7. But Moswell in the middle of combat with the amount of damage output that Hell has already feels good. Add in the Celestial Legion Helm, the fact that it's just a really, really good stat item for mages, and the fact that you're going to be adding healing. Your survivability is just through the roof, it feels like, and it really does elevate everybody else around you. Add in the sovereignty that Gino has whenever you happen to be in the area of the mid 3v3, it's going to be difficult to kill this healer.
Griff will get belly flopped on by Happen, a blink under the tower by Gino, plus the watery grave. Centaurus shots all off the mark. Griff cannot find a home for any of those shots to hit. So it'll be a couple ultimates down now in the duo lane. Lil Richie had to use the beads, though. That water grave push combo was a little bit too threatening for them. So they'll have to back it away here. 3-2 on the scoreboard, but about 2,000 gold up for the Sturdy Artisans. And looking to continue that aggression across the board, even about 2,700 XP that they're up, even if it is only a 1 kill difference.
Yeah, it's honestly impressive, right? Just showcases how well they're playing the entire map. Again, I think a lot of that early on we were able to attribute over to Sino, but now you're really starting to see it, I think, throughout all of the roles. Not just Sino, but like Relentless One getting aggressive. Gino has been very present on this map and is making Soul Reaper's life just hell to exist in this mid lane. Of course, Moswell is actually hell. But those are things, you get a great Persephone ult, and it's just for Peel, unfortunately. It's just those moments, right? But that could be the end of a team fight for Sturdy Artisans in like 2 minutes if they take a fight that they just shouldn't.
Imagine if Soul Reaper could have been there. There could have been a little bit of extra follow-up damage to that ult.
If his health was like just a little higher.
Because like that was like the perfect clothesline ult. I mean, Sino didn't even get to finish walking out of the jungle, and he turns around to get hit by a grasp of death. Great little placement there by Soul Reaper, and good ward coverage to be able to even catch him there. That's the ultimate reason why he still sees that. And now that Soul Reaper doesn't have an ultimate, a lot less safety on this Persephone. Giddy up actually throws Richie and Happen a little too far. Centaurus needs that third shot to hit. Can Griff get it? Yes, he will! Finally finds the snipes this time around to close out the kill.
And that's just, I mean, that's honestly just clean. We saw what Lil Richie was able to do earlier with the juke shoes on. Not quite able to find the same amount of progress here. And it just puts them in danger. Moswell's playing like a madman.
There is no mercy in this mid lane. Moswell going as far as to diving the tier 1 tower. Thanks to the help of that Celestial Legion helm, those extra little prots have really made Moswell that much more aggressive. It's made mages in general that much more aggressive in this mid lane.
And it's opened up so many opportunities for him, like you said, not just diving the tower, but when you can like combine that with the sovereignty, like this Nemesis just kind of has to sit there and cry. Like Nim, especially right now, you have a little bit of pin on the Jotuns, but like you're not going to be hitting too hard up against the other mage unless you drop your ult. And then, well, maybe feels like it could be an overcommit. Although with the way that the fact that he's 3-0, I don't think it's an overcommit if you just dropped everything to kill Moswell. You get the Void Shield as well on this hell. It feels like it's going to do, I want to say, like less damage than what we see out of some of the other mages, typically like the build that you're actually seeing out of Persephone. But you don't need the damage if your scaling's pretty good. Hell has really good base damage already, as we've seen. Plus, you're focusing on healing and survivability for late game. So realistically, Moswell's just in a great spot. The fact that they have a 2-level lead as well just feels good.
Gino with a push on Soul Reaper, gets the beads from the mid laner once more. And that is a massive win for the support and for the side of Sturdy Artisans, making sure to eliminate yet another safety point. And back to the boxing, the 1v1s between the Hunters and Griff. Comes out on top yet again, even if he got low. That death immunity, that temporary death immunity from that ultimate, able to keep him alive there. He gets the kill, and now a Gold Fury start up by Sturdy Artisans. That one will go their way unless some kind of miracle play comes through. It will not. It's gold for Artisans. Maybe an extra kill. Caddy low. Rotation from the solo. Relentless cleans up an easy kill for himself. And now Happen stuck in the middle of 4 players. Make that as many as they can get down. Another one goes their way for Sturdy Artisans as Moswell picks that up. It's 4 down on the side of ET. And an extra Fury for the Sturdy Artisans.
Talk about a successful sweep. It might even get more successful. Shootable is not out of this. They are still chasing him, and they are going to get it. Delayed deicide. Lil Richie is respawned, but they killed every single member of ET there, J-Mac. And it starts, again, maybe what felt like a 1v1, just a very small skirmish overall in the duo lane. A couple of fights procking out. It's just a good Gold Fury call from Sturdy Artisans. They managed to get it while nobody else is around. If happens to be about 10 steps ahead, maybe even 5 steps ahead, that belly flop is in a position where he could at least try to steal and risk their life for it. And ultimately, it's just good positioning from Sturdy Artisans to recognize that there's not going to be a response time. And then ET forced the fight. They say, well, we lost the Fury. We got to get something out of this. And unfortunately, it doesn't go the way they want. It's too much of a separated fight from them. Caddy has nowhere to go, and it makes it much easier for the rest of the team to just collapse and then go one by one by one and rip apart ET.
Griff recognizing the aggression coming out from Lil Richie. He goes up into the Centaurus, needs the second shot. That's going to make sure he comes back up after that kill. Indeed, he'll get it. Gino picks up a second, and Happen goes down. The initial gank coming from ET to collapse on the Hunter turned into a 3-for swing on none on the side of Sturdy Artisans. Great plays out of Griff.
I'm going to be honest, that one hurts. If you lose the Fury and then you lose a fight, but you're trying to be proactive and pull something back in your favor, it's understandable. That one was a gank that should have been yours that got ripped away from you. It definitely is starting to stack up, and this is how games get out of hand fast, J-Mac. This is where the control, I think, from Sturdy Artisans can really start to kind of clinch down on what ET have across the map. Still have Pyromancer, Fire Giant, things like that to try and pick up, but we've seen how aggressive the rest of Sturdy Artisans are playing, and with 2 Hunters, it is going to make it pretty easy whenever they decide to look at towers together, to strip those away. If they decide to look at Pyromancer or Fire Giant for Sturdy Artisans, the burn is going to be there pretty quickly. So you have to be careful. Happen, right now seems like he's in a really easy spot to get picked off.
And that's belly flop down, which means it's an easy go here against the support. Moswell and his support Gino will move in, and that should be a kill up against the Bacchus. Credits who's going to get it. It will be Moswell for the final in hand, and Soul Reaper just lost over half their health. Basically just from the hell, but the Kappa also putting in some damage. Caddy may have stepped into the wrong jungle, and that jungle being the jungle at all. Gino goes in with the Watery Grave. Relentless one still putting out the damage. Caddy has nowhere to go. Slowed down by Sino and bled out to eternity. It's Griff who gets the last credit for the kill. 15 of them now on the board for Sturdy Artisans.
Yeah, and Soul Reaper just trying to get some farm, and you have to look at it. It was 3 levels, now 2 levels down. I like this pathing running through the red buff, just trying to get away, but the slow from hell,
good Aegis.
great Aegis to keep you alive. Didn't have to use the beads, but you're getting zoned out. They can see that Medusa was just pushing. This is a free fire giant unless Shootable can do something just miraculous.
Shootable's got to make a big play here, use the beads to get in
Oh
there,
my
and he does
God!
steal it away. The paralyzing spit out of the solo laner, holds out and steals the objective, but will lose his life in the process of it. It's 3. 3 still get it, though, and it's 3 that you needed on Soul Reaper, who's been struggling in mid. Lil Richie, who's been going back and forth in these trades, finally has a little bit of extra oomph in their shots now.
Look, Shootable just single-handedly made it so that this game is not an absolute rollover. I mean, you've got 2 kills this entire time. You have to stop getting picked like that. Happen, once again, just pulled off. And unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it. Personally, I mean, Happen hasn't even hit level 12. Doesn't even have the opportunity to get something like a Magi's Blessing because, you know, the itemization, the gold right now is not favoring ET. Doesn't have the opportunity to pick up the beads and just have some of that CC. So Sturdy Artisans are just picking on someone that they know that they can pick on continually. Same thing happens to Caddy there. But Shootable gives them an opportunity. Granted, they still only have 2 people who have Fire Giant, but that's 5 people on Sturdy Artisans that don't have it. So you have a little more of a chance to try and defend and kind of bounce back. And you have to just look at this. I mean, it comes down to zoning. Really good beads from Shootable. Otherwise, he's completely CC'd, completely out of there. They thought Gino was going to be enough. And unfortunately for them, Gino just, well, actually did everything in his power. Unfortunately, was not able to lock down through the beads. And so Shootable makes a play that at least prolongs the game for his team and gives them a good opportunity to get back into it.
Yeah, that's the ultimate downside there is you sometimes don't always expect these solo laners specifically to have a set of purification beads and then not knowing the cooldown of Shootables because they've kind of just let Shootable do things over in the solo lane ever since he's kind of fallen behind. They haven't really prioritized focusing on him, getting it, you know, a count and a timer on those beads. So a good play by him to still have those up and be able to make his way in to steal that Fire Giant away. Soul Reaper and Lil Richie, the only ones with that buff still left, as Shootable died right after and then happened in the team fight after. Tier 2 in mid lane went down after all that fighting was said and done, and now it will be a Fury going the way of Sturdy Artisans as well. That one will be the Primal Fury going down. And trades out for a Tier 1 tower right side, so ET try and mitigate a little bit of that gold. But Gore, I mean, we're already 10,500 gold up for Sturdy Artisans. We're only 17 minutes in the game. We're getting pretty close to some level 20s here on the side of Sturdy Artisans.
It's the level differences right now. Like the gold hurts in and of itself, but 4 levels in solo, 4 levels in mid, 4 levels in jungle, 3 levels there for the carries and the supports. You're feeling it every single fight. You can't, even in a 5-on-5, feel like you're going into it with an advantage. You get the Wind Demon just now for Lil Richie, so that opens up more opportunities, at least up against like Sino, Relentless One, and Griff, although Sino is usually doing the killing a little bit quicker. Might be difficult to do. You've got a mantle and a couple of protection items there for Relentless One as well. So it might not be the easiest kill, but they are still squishy. And so Lil Richie has opened up a win condition for them. It's just whether or not they can get the map state somewhere where they can do something with that win. Because right now, I mean, if I'm choosing to fight on ET, it's either a pick like this, if you could get Relentless One isolated, or you're split pushing / defending under Phoenixes. I don't think you're even stepping up for the Fire Giant coming up. Unless maybe you're Shootable, in which case you've got a pretty good track record so far this game of stepping up the Fire Giants.
Hey, his beads are back up too, so he could definitely make his way in there. The game is slowing down just a little bit here. Only 1 tower left standing on the side of ET. That's the solo Tier 2, and then it's all Phoenixes from there. Some decent split pushing so far here, though, out of Richie and Caddy, making sure that they can at least keep those waves pushed up to the Sturdy Artisans side of the map.
Yeah,
that way they can't
good pressure.
really continue putting in that pressure towards these Phoenixes, towards that Tier 2 tower. And instead, Sturdy Artisans, knowing that this Fire Giant will be coming back up in about a minute or so, they're going to start backing themselves up, buying up their items. And I kind of want to point out towards Sino here, he's foregone getting any kind of like major attack speed item that we usually see out of Hunters. He's gone for the entirety of the Mace Tree. We'll see how that works out for him. We'll see how Moswell gets himself out of this situation. A full collapse on the mid laner, but the Aegis, the healing, the CC immunity, everything is keeping Moswell alive. It's a full turnaround. Soul Reaper gets pushed against the wall. Sino picks up one. Griff dashes in to find Lil Richie and isolates him for a kill of his own. and what was a full team collapse on the mid laner of Sturdy Artisans has completely turned on its head.
And I think, depending on whether or not Happen goes down here, there's an entire conversation to be had. But the way you highlight that is exactly the way it needs to be highlighted. That was a 5-on-1. They tried everything in their power. It is a 6-0 and 7 hell. 5 people trying to kill that hell. And if they had been able to go a second longer, they would have, right? I mean, Moswall had no health, but Moswall makes it out alive thanks to his team, and that creates a lot of trouble. But it just goes to showcase how survivable this hell is in general. That a 5-on-1 turned in a 5-for-none trade, J-Mac. I mean, it was an entire collapse onto someone with a lot of health and a lot of protections, as well as a lot of damage and a lot of healing, as it turns out. And Moswall just makes him just chase a little too far, a little too deep. And then the team, the rest of the Sturdy Artisans just collapse in, and well, we saw what happened. They get the full deicide, they get a Fire Giant, and they're feeling really good.
Unfortunately, the hero shootable was down, so the Fire Giant does go to the Sturdy Artisans this time. Nobody to cheekily steal that one away from right under them. And instead, it'll be turned right towards the Tier 2 tower. The right side Phoenix as well goes down. And it's just relentless one against the squad. Another multi-man versus one. But once again, the one has backup. Lil Richie, the first casualty of war for ET in this fight. And Happen was close behind right after. Loses about a quarter of his health. Griff goes up to the Centaurus and melts away Soul Reaper. Him and Sino, the Hunter, team up. Takes him down. Happen is gone. Caddy is gone. It's shootable against the world, and the world does not care at all what is happening here. They're going to go straight for the Titan. Shootable cannot stop this one with ultimate down, with everything expended here. Titan in game 1 going to Sturdy Artisans.
Every single one of those last few fights from Sturdy Artisans was the call an ambulance, but not for me. Like, every single time, there's 1 or 2 people that are getting collapsed in on, and, you know, they're limping away weakly, they're definitely struggling, and then they just collapse. And by that, I mean the team collapses in on everybody that's around them. It's just like a perfect bait, and then they just cling the trap. And it almost exactly looked like bear traps every single time because it came from both sides. They always cut off the flanking path. Sturdy Artisans just made it almost impossible for ET to do anything to be able to get engaged in that. And it just looked so clean from them that they turned around fights that realistically should have been impossible.
Even with the oddball pick out of Sino here, nothing unsurprising out of him. Him and the team pick up game number 1. We'll take it to a quick break. We'll come back to get you started for game 2. Welcome back, everybody. Game number 1 complete by the sturdy Artisans here. A strong, dominant performance out of them. And I think kind of a testament to the veteranship of this team more than anything, Gormizer. I mean, we kind of saw what the state of the game was when Moswell had 5 people collapse on him at once in the mid lane, and he lived. And instead it was the team that collapsed on him that got nearly wiped right after.
Yeah, it happened with Moswell, then it happened with Relentless One. It just felt like it synopsized the game in such a way that it showcased gold lead, it showcased experience lead in a way that realistically you don't get to show off that often in Smite. So when one person can live through an onslaught of the other team just because of how far ahead they are. And it all started from just really solid plays early on. I think Griff had some really good shots. This is after missing a couple of ults. Finally able to find one early on, but then it transitioned into clean gameplay throughout the rest of it. To the point where it was 1v1s. If I remember correctly, this is what led to like a Gold Fury. It just created a, I don't want to say like chasm, but like it's such a huge opportunity every single time the sturdy Artisans needed one. And he had a 9.0 KDA, you got 11.0 here for Sino. They just played it so well. And it's hard to describe it as anything other than that. Like, how many times can you say, hey, this was good, and eloquently have it sound something different? Because each time it was play the savior, play the killer. You had mentioned it, but like Sino went for like only the mace tree for all of his items. I think he might have been able to pick up something by the end. He also might have just not been able to afford it. I'll take a peek. No, yeah, he just only had the mace tree picked up. He wasn't going for attack speed. He wasn't playing necessarily Hunter. He was focused all in on those abilities, but you could see how hard those autos were hitting. They had Hell, who was survivable, who was providing healing. It was just so difficult to overcome, I think, for ET. Then honestly, if Moswell's playing, Hell might have to be a ban.
Potentially here. Also Shell out of Sino. Didn't go for an Aegis, didn't go for a Blink, didn't go for something wild. He actually goes for a Shell and fully upgraded it to make sure that they could really play the Protector here on this side. Moswell comes up with 10,000 damage and 7,500 healing out of this Hell. Some potential healing coming back through here just to help out of happen. 1,700 out of the Bacchus. That's not going to do all too much there. I think a lot of that's just the benevolence coming through to help him out here, but just dominant performance across the board for sturdy Artisans. I think going back to this Hell is a very important topic here, specifically up against this team, against sturdy Artisans. Moswell's known for not only known, but he is very proficient on 3 gods: Zeus, Opwash, and Hell. Yeah, Zeus is a god that we have seen banned consistently recently just because of how strong he is. Opwash, not so much as I would love to see Moswell bring the Opwash back, because those were some of my favorite times in Smite to watch, was whenever he was dominating with one of my favorite gods to see out there. But now that this Hell is still a relevant pick, especially with the things like Celestial Legion Helm and Voidstone, which was the first 2 items that he rushed, I gotta imagine, Gore, that this has to be something in their minds for a ban.
And it makes me wonder, because they did ban Zeus last time around, and like you said, that's been more meta. Hell, it feels like, and we saw this when Moswell was playing with Duck Club during the promotional tournament, was that, sometimes you just gotta ban Hell. If it comes down to it, sometimes that's just what you have to do. But it would be nice, I think it'd be fun to watch see if Opwash came out.
I would
just
love
because it'd be fun for everybody involved. But also, those outside of Zeus, and realistically, even including Zeus, you're not naming the top anything the top mid laners right now in the game.
Yeah.
I think it's impressive that you're looking at Moswell's god pool, and it is not even overlapping. There's no Venn diagram. It's just 2 separate circles of here's what the meta has been and here's what Moswell's playing.
There are 2 opposite sides of the spectrum as far as his circles are concerned. It's here's what he loves to play, and here's what's good right now. I mean, Thoth, Agni are the top 2 at the moment. You can kind of splash Zeus in there every so often, kind of depending on what's getting picked around there. But it is Zeus, Amma, Kabrakan banned away by ET. Sturdy Artisans take Serket, Fenrir, and Thoth, so taking away a couple of these top mages at the very least. But Bastet does make her way back in here. Sturdy Artisans pick that up one more time. Relentless One went 6-0 with it last game, Gore. Gotta imagine we probably will be seeing this god go back to him one more time.
Yeah, and I have to imagine it's one of those, well, I guess I'll play Bastet,
oh,
guys.
No.
Oh, no. Yeah, just lock it in. You get it immediately. Again, there's flexibility. We've seen it pretty much, I don't want to say exclusively solo, because it definitely did hit some early jungle games during the promo tournament, but it's kind of been exclusively solo, so you have to assume Relentless One will take it back unless Sino is really itching for a Bastet game. And it went guess what? Really well against who? Persephone and Nemesis. I mean, it almost feels like they're trying to run it back here for ET. Maybe thinking, I mean, those two weren't necessarily like the problem, but they definitely didn't help alleviate a lot of that pressure. I think Nemesis early on got kind of pushed down and knocked back, and unfortunately for them, didn't necessarily do too much late game to transition it. You get the Hell and the Kuzenbo back if you're Sturdy Artisans here, and I'm going to tell you, J-Mac, if you're Sturdy Artisans, you're happy with this.
Is this just a salty run back happening right now? I mean, we have like the same top 3 for Sturdy Artisans. I'm pretty sure this is also the same top 3 for ET last time around. Not the greatest look in game number 1 there by ET. Phenomenal look out of Sturdy Artisans. If they're coming for, you know, this very similar style of play, it must just for them come down to we made a misstep early. We think that the comp works against this. We're going to try and run it back here.
Yeah.
Not sure if that's the call with them specifically there, though. So we'll have to see if that ends up going through there. We do have a small little thing going on. We'll make sure to get right back into picks and bans here in just a moment. But Gormizer, I mean, right now I'm looking at Sturdy Artisans. If they're even able to get remotely similar compositions out of their draft, it's going to be dangerous here for ET.
Yeah, I think if you can have the presence and the healing that Hell brought. Well, first off, that almost would end it to me just because of how well Moswell played it. That alone creates a lot of opportunities. But good presence out of the jungle from Sino. If you get the Bass step back in solo, it just feels like everything really stacks up. So I like this ban again, just dealing with the Hell, controlling what was, I think, a significant problem that really transcended not just mid lane, but really into team fights. And it was just that singularity in the mid lane that was Moswell.
Yeah, so we did have small little error there on the picks and bans. Now we are in the official picks and bans here, game number 2. Zeus and Hell, perfect adaptation. What we were talking about with Moswell, you can't let him have a god like that again when he puts up, you know, when a Hell puts up 10k damage, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but then 7,500 healing right after. When a Divine Ruin was rushed, there's a Cerberus on the team, you have a Bacchus on the team too. When you have all 3 of those things very early in the game and Hell is still able to put out 7,000 plus healing over the course of only 20 minutes of play, still rather impressive. Amaterasu thrown into the mix of the bans, although it is the same 3, 2 Assassins and the Thoth. Both of those Assassins being more so towards a support role. But Bastet still that first pickup here for Sturdy Artisans.
Yeah, I think Cabrakan was one of the bans last time around, and that was something that, I mean, could still make its way through. We've seen him a lot in the jungle. I think he's flexible enough that he can still technically play support in solo, but he's been a jungler through and through. We'll see. I think it was ET that had banned that out, if they value him highly enough to pick it up. But I love this pivot. Bastet, I think, well, I want to say it was manageable. You mentioned it, Relentless one was 6-0, so manageable might not be what you want. You might want something. Yeah, I was going to say, you might want something that is like, hey, we can deal with this and shut it down early. But you get the RDO presumably for the solo lane. She's good at staying alive. She's good at keeping her team alive. She's good at CCing people. And kind of a nightmare to Bastet just because of the cripple field. So it should be helpful there. Izanami's got good pressure as well in the duo lane. So ET have taken some of the problems that they had from that last comp and already adjusted it.
I mean, that seems to have kind of been the pivot point here for game 2s is we lose a lot of pressure in dual lane, so we leave the Izanami
So we
open,
grab Iza.
and we grab Izanami. That kind of seems to be the name of the game here. And you throw Ganesh in there, which is going to give you a lot of safety, a lot of control early on, some decent objective burn with that Dharmic Pillars. So you got a stark front line here with RDO and Ganesh. Now it's going to come down to what the remaining back line is and then what that jungle selection is going to be for ET. Knowing the Sturdy Artisans, this Cabrakan is probably going over into the duo lane as the support, this Bastet solo lane, so I still don't think that we have seen Sino's pick yet.
Honestly, I agree with you on that just because of the fact that Sino, like, right now, Cabrakan is too meta for Sino to be picking it up, right? And it's too close, too meta adjacent for him to try and lock it in. We'll see, though, because, again, it's something that we've been seeing widely successful in the jungle, so it would work out pretty well if he does decide to go that route. Ganesh is the one that's really interesting and standing out to me on the composition right now, though, just because Izanami, like, we had mentioned Izanami as being like the pressure, and she should bring enough to make up for the lack that Ganesh brings. But I don't think that this Ganesh was locked in for early game power or prowess or fight or clear or anything like that. I think it was locked in because Ohm is a 6 silence, and if you want to stop people from fighting you, you just tell them they can't use abilities.
Yeah, especially, and it's also great against Cabrakan specifically because that Tremor is such a dangerous tool, especially in duo lane. Essentially, you kind of just lock somebody down for like 8 to 10 seconds, depending how close they were to the center. Ganesh is perfect at being able to stop something like that down. But now with all these mages getting banned away, I mean, we saw the Dodgy, and then we saw we have the Agni, and then Persephone, Morgan Le Fay as the bans. So 5, 6 mage bans so far, and you kind of wonder, well, where do the god pools go to next? Well, Merlin and Tiamat seem to be the answers there. Sturdy Artisans pick up the Merlin for their mid laner Moswall, and then Soul Reaper will go on to the Tiamat. Does have a 100% win rate so far, but again, only one game picked. And now we see Sino's pick here, so he is going to go to the Scotty Jungle one more time.
And what I like about this, I'm going to ignore the Scotty Jungle for a little bit. What I like about the Tiamat is that we have seen earlier what she is capable of. Still good CC, decent damage, flooding the map with minions, still very capable of controlling things like that, but doesn't necessarily hit that burst. At least earlier we saw was not hitting the same amount of damage numbers some of the other mages did.
That's not
when I think of mid laners for Moswall, you had mentioned it. You had mentioned Zeus, you had mentioned Apwash, you had mentioned this Hell. I think Merlin has to be on that list as well, just because of how prominent it was at the time. And so I think this is something that just, again, feels dangerously comfortable for Sturdy Artisans. We just saw what this Bastet and what this Scotty are capable of doing, and that enough is enough to convince me that this at least 3 core for Artisans, it's going to be solid.
I would love to see it mixed up and be the Medusa jungle, but I doubt that we're going to see that here. Game number 2 between the Sturdy Artisans and ET underway. However, do we see Medusa jungle? It's not going to be there. I don't know why I'm getting my hopes up. I don't know why I even brought it up. I don't
know why I tried to get your hopes up.
You
said it, and I'm like, I'm going to lead you.
You were goading me into this. You were just like, yeah,
I'm going to lead you to the cliff and then see what happens.
You had it already ready to go, and you're like, yeah, it's not going to be there, but hey, make him think that it's going to be there. No. It will be the Scotty jungle one more time for Sino. Going up against a Loki. Loki we haven't seen in quite some time, Gormizer. Feels that he kind of popped in kind of the midway point of Phase 3 last season, and then he kind of just fell off the radar for quite some time.
Yeah, he was, and I honestly think, like, there's still a presence for Loki to be had across the game, but is it the presence we saw? Like, so what was it, end of Season 7? He, like, crept in at, like, World's time, and that was about it. Then throughout, like you said, Season 8, I know Johnny specifically at the beginning of last year was absolutely insane on this pick and caused a lot of trouble for a lot of people. But, and, you know, he has that potential to hyper-carry. It's just whether or not he's going to be able to match. I can't believe these words are about to come out of my mouth. Whether or not he's going to be able to match up with the damage and the presence that Sino outputs on Scotty. Should that be a problem? Absolutely not. But for some reason, Sino just happens to be really good at jungle, by the way, and makes it very difficult for you to play even a top-tier assassin at the same level that he can bring something like a Hunter or an Eset in the lane. And so I think that's going to be a big up for Caddy, is trying to make their presence known across the map.
We actually see Gino not going to the Tremors in his first 2 levels, opted for his 1 and his 2 as a primary double stun, as we get to see it highlighted there. Dash in by Happen does throw Gino up in the air, and he'll eat a ton of damage from the Always Out of Richie. And that's just the nature of what you have with Izanami, is you could pick essentially whatever support you want, because Izanami is going to do the heavy lifting as far as the lane is concerned. And this 2v2 that we've been seeing in the solo lane, specifically I should just say this 2-man grouping by at least one team has been working out well. Griff eats a lot of damage. A dash in by Richie, and Caddy has made their way over, and that's going to be first blood. Going over to ET. Can they get the double? For the jungler here, it would be a huge start. It will be Richie grabbing the second kill, but taking out the dual lane early of the Sturdy Artisans is a great start for ET.
And you get a kill onto Lil Richie, a kill onto Caddy. That shows what this Loki can do in the right hands and in the right points on the map. And also the difference, I mean, you had kind of mentioned it. I think I've seen people memeing it on Twitter and in Twitch chats over the last few days, but, like, you have one team that's kind of playing a 2-1-2 meta, and that's Sturdy Artisans here. Like, Sino is going into the jungle, is clearing out camps and invading and stuff, but also spending an awful lot of time over here in solo where Shootable does not have that help. Caddy has been able to use that, capitalize on that, and go for an aggressive play in the duo lane, but now you're still just Loki.
Caddy collapsed on, but thanks to the help of that stealth, able to get out. But now it's a 3v2. And it's Relentless One in danger. The beads have already been expended, and the CC is too strong. Soul Reaper's rotation was enough to net a kill here for ET. And a great early start out of the boys on the Chaos team as they pick up their 3rd kill of the game.
And that's, I think, again, the biggest thing. The fact that they have been able to get 3 kills early on, good first blood, good presence, and more importantly, good counter rotations, right? Caddy is not getting caught out, in the jungle the same way that they were on Nemesis. They have much higher capabilities early game as Loki than they did on the Nim, especially up against the Scotty. The damage is definitely a little more persistent. You can see it really hitting hard onto specifically Relentless One, Griff a little bit earlier. And I think we'll see it on Sino as well throughout all of this. Hit level 5, so has that Assassinate. I expect to see this be a heavy point of contention, potentially a god to play through if they can continue on this route. Tiamat just sets up for it.
And there's the unfortunate part of losing your ohm early, stuck inside the Tremors, and then spit at by Medusa. Griff, after falling for first blood earlier on in the game, gets a nice turnaround kill. Still behind Lil Richie as terms of experience is concerned, but that closes up that XP lead. About 1,000 it was for ET, now basically none. And only about a 700 gold lead now up for ET.
Which isn't a lot, but it's not a little either, right? I mean, granted, I guess thrown across all members of the team, it is kind of a little, but we don't mention that. It's one of those is first blood bounty, right? So you've got a little lead, at least somewhere on your map. And you have to look at the fact that Little Richie is still level 5 versus Griff, who just ticked over. What unfortunate timing.
Oh, and I think he got hit by one of those tremor ticks, or maybe it was the dot from the Medusa after Viper shots. Putting in some work. Cat comes out. Relentless gets stunned. Relentless gets burned down. Caddy, their second kill of the game, are on this right side of the map, punishing this Bastet solo one more time. Still doesn't have enough gold to put that tier 3 item on the board just yet.
Yeah, and I like this. Good presence overall from ET. The way they're playing aggressively, the fact that they're getting return kills, especially early on, while it hasn't necessarily amassed, as you had highlighted, to like this massive gold lead just yet, I think it showcases where their presence is going to be. And so I want to start seeing what they're capable of doing. Gold Fury is going to spawn in about 14 seconds. Once that's available, if you're getting kills on the left-hand side or in mid, put pressure on it. If you're getting kills on right, go into the jungle, things like that. And I think I want to see what they can do with it, how the macro play is after these team fights. Because so far, the scrappiness of this game feels way better than last game. In fact, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, they've already doubled the amount of kills that they got in game number 1. So they are on a much better trajectory this time around.
I mean, one of the follies that we saw out of a team like Lil S Pog earlier on was they were getting a lot of kills, especially in game number 2. They were getting a lot of good fights, a lot of good kills, but they weren't capitalizing. They weren't getting objectives. They weren't taking towers, gold furies, pyros, anything like that. And that's why their gold lead was never able to really kind of bring it. They were never able to really pull themselves out of that gold pit that they were in at that time. Right now, we see ET kind of striking early, but because no objectives were up just yet, they couldn't do anything. Now, if they can start getting some of these picks, like you said, maybe add Gold Fury to your arsenal, maybe kind of put your eyes towards it, or at least get some vision over there, because Sturdy Artisans, they already want that pressure. Merlin, one of the better-known mages for at least burning objectives down.
Yeah, that's something we had talked about. I think earlier today, he has to stay alive. He has to be able to survive in the team fights. Flicker doesn't get you very far, but the damage output he has can be deadly. Speaking of deadly, Caddy has to be careful here.
Caddy chased down by Calder. Gino will spot him out, but Gino will not go too aggressive up against Caddy. Instead, turns their sights towards Happen. They get stuck inside the Tremors for just a moment, but that remove obstacle dash gets him out. Gino misses the stun. The damage up against Caddy, so that'll be a quick disengage there by the jungler. Swordper throws out the stun. Sino walks through the Dharmic Pillars. Quick beads. Immunes the slow coming through. Caddy goes in, finds a stun up against Gino, who drops the walls back. A double stun, the Tremors, the knockup is good. Out of Happen, that's good for trying to fight around, but Sino over the wall throws Calder right back in, and the cat comes through. Soul Reaper stays alive thanks to the help of Relentless One. Caddy goes down, it's a kill for Griff, and a 3-for-1 swing. Perfect rotation from Relentless.
Look at Mozwall's health, man. Like, oh, I can't. It's too close. Too close for comfort. Sturdy Artisans, I mean, that is maybe the best rotation you could have had. Good CC chains, good lockdown to be able to save. Like, Mozwall should have died at the minimum there, have it be a 3-for-2. Managing to stay alive throughout all of that, plus, like you said, the rotations has been great. Now you might even get a solo kill for Griff.
Griff gets silenced down. One more auto. How many can he juke? Not enough is the answer. It's Little Richie with the solo kill, but Sino is back for blood now. He throws out the ice carpet to find Richie, dashes through, but gets caught out instantly. Sino and Gino teaming up to get the kill, the revenge kill on the duo lane Hunter here. So Richie does go down. We do get a nice little replay here in just a moment. I believe it's from Mozwall's perspective during that fight for just how low he gets in this fight.
And then this is, so first off, look at his chain of abilities. He's burning damage throughout all of this. They took a majority of their health bar throughout the duration while all they're doing is damage dumping into Gino. So he gets low. It's the CC from Relentless One that gives Moswall that opportunity. Otherwise, it at least feels like a trade. And so a great rotation, specifically from Relentless One to make sure it goes as well as it does. Unfortunately, they're sitting in timeout for right now. But everything else that happens, at least in that fight, feels fantastic. And that damage burn applied to objectives, applied to gods, no matter where it is, that showcases just why Merlin is a little scary.
I mean, it's a rare showcase of even getting to see that dragon fire, that, you know, the one you drop down, the dragon spit in this little conal towards each other. You don't often in team fights get to see that against a person. That's usually against an objective because it's not often going to move, or you move it very little so you can keep it locked down inside.
Those Cabrakan walls, keeping them locked inside the flames is just like chef's kiss.
It's a dream. That is a Merlin's dream fight right there. Moswall lived with 20 health was what he got down to at the very end of that team
I'm glad
fight.
you were watching. I forgot that was kind of the point. Huh?
Yeah,
I was so enamored with everything else going on.
I know, all that team fight goes through. Soul Reaper has to dash away. Relentless gets caught out yet again. Cadu credit to the kill, but Soul Reaper on the wrong side of the fight gets Sino and Griff low. Happen is here, and Happen will put a kill on the board for the Ganesh. Gotta love seeing that. But unfortunately for him, the rest of the team is falling alongside him. 2 down on the side of Sturdy Artisans, but ET loses 3 during the fight.
Yeah, ultimately, it ends up still being worthwhile for Sturdy Artisans. But again, this is the case, and we saw this earlier, and I think it is worth mentioning again. If you have a level lead, if you have an experience lead, a gold lead, and you have a fight that goes even remotely even like that, then you're going to be feeling pretty good if you were the team that's behind. Right now, that's technically ET, and when you look at the levels, you got 2 levels up there for shootable. Technically a level down in mid as well as in jungle, but ultimately, I think you're feeling pretty confident with your capabilities throughout these team fights. Realistically, the spot that maybe hurts the most is Happen, but Happen has showcased exactly the one thing that is good about Ganesh no matter what. Thermic Pillars. And yeah, it hits harder with levels, and ideally you want to catch up as much as possible, but you've got it, and that's realistically all you need for some of these fights. Lock people into the box and make things a little more awkward, or catch them off guard, because Sino, technically Moswall unless Flicker is up, so like I want to say a conditional, put an asterisk on it, but as well as Griff, they're going to have trouble getting out of there. Gino won't be able to get out of there without proccing the ult, so that's an easy lockdown if he's able to find them.
And we saw earlier that Sino actually had to use the beads to kind of get rid of the slow in order to walk out and live during that last little fight over by that red buff, that fight where we saw Moswell get down to 20 health and turn fights, and kind of turn that fight around himself. But over into the duo lane, it's Hunter versus Hunter, but it's the jungling Hunter that strikes hard up against little Richie. Quarter HP left on the Izanami. And Happen is just trying to exist in this jungle, is just trying to walk through the jungle, and ends up meeting up with Gino. And he'll turn some fire back with the help of Soul Reaper. Moswall level 13 on this Merlin, the largest of the level leads so far here, level 13 to level 11 in this mid lane.
You know, you had mentioned this earlier today, but I want to talk about it now as well, because it was a small buff for Stone of Binding. I might have to wait a little bit. Happen gets caught out here. So does Caddy.
Caddy with a quick assassinate to get him out of the middle of the walls. Moswall drops the fire and starts burning through Soul Reaper, but Shootable gets the credit for the kill. Griff takes down Happen, and Soul Reaper stuck inside the Tremors gets the kill over to not Gino. And Richie can only do what Richie can do best at this point, throw a couple of billies and hope that they don't turn to him. Instead, it's Shootable that was the target, and those two will have to turn away. They are able to at least get one. They take out Moswall during the fight, so ET at least gets something for that.
Yeah, I think getting rid of Moswall as well saves that Gold Fury from happening. If Moswall's alive, that's maybe the freest Gold Fury ever, and it makes it so much easier, but that burn disappearing, they've still got decent damage. They might have been able to try and pull the objective, but it would have been very risky, right? They would have taken a lot of damage in the process. It would have taken a little bit longer than they'd be comfortable with, and opened up a lot of opportunity for ET to come in and try to go for a steal. So I like the fact that Sturdy Artisans don't go for that objective, and even more important for ET that they pick it up. Unfortunately for Sturdy Artisans, it did leave open the opportunity of a Gold Fury for somebody else.
Dark Pillars are down, so this is all just going to come down to the burn of
Oh, no,
Caddy and
Moswall.
Richie. Moswall is here. Will drop the Blizzard. The Ice Bolt is a little too early, and that one will go the way of ET. So they're able to get a nice objective to kind of shore up some of that gold, which is only about 1,000 up so far for Sturdy Artisans, and might be a little bit closer of a gold lead now as ET gets a kill on to Relentless yet again. 5th time down for this Bastet solo. Relentless, who went undying in game number 1. We kind of joked about, you know, was this Bastet manageable? It seems in game 2, Relentless much more manageable now.
Yeah, I think that, again, it's a little easier, I think, for where ET are at. But it's still uncomfortable. It feels bad when you get the Gold Fury, and you're still technically a little bit behind, right? Is it enough that it's the end all of end of the game? No. It's hardly any gold at all. But it still hurts. Like, ego, I guess, is is what I'm getting at. Like, if I did that, I don't feel bad about it because I closed the gap of the game up, but I still feel a little upset. Plus, with Pyromancer now going the way of Sturdy Artisans, probably ends up being, oh, maybe not a free objective for them like I thought it was. J-Mac, I was going to give it to him, but ET, they at least respond in kind. At least prolong how long it's going to take them here. And Happen has a good chance to try and steal it.
Dharmic Pillars are up. They drop down, but it's not enough damage. A very close call there by Sturdy Artisans. Quite risky to pull it in the face of 2 Guardians. But they do secure that one for themselves, to say the very least. They up that gold lead just a little bit, so now it's about 1,300 up for Sturdy Artisans. Experience a little bit more so, 3,300 for the team in blue. Most of that lead coming from that duo in mid lane, as Relentless is still a little bit behind Shootable as far as the XP is concerned, though starting to at least close that lead up a little bit.
Now, I'd mentioned it earlier, and I want to talk about it. Gino here is exactly the player that I was going to highlight as well. It's the Stone of Binding, something you had highlighted earlier, like kind of being like the perfect bridge item right now. It got like a couple of prot increases. I think both are now 35,
right,
which was the main increase for this patch. And that feels good just in and of itself, but realistically, I have loved this item's passive for a long time, especially with certain Guardians because of how the CC can be. And it's very, very simple. If you hit them with a hard CC, you strip away some protections. And I think it's a flat reduction, so it's not like it's going to scale crazy great into late game, but it is one of those things early on, especially with how much pin that there has been, and I guess conversely also focus on getting those prots as fast as possible. It has made it happen. So yeah, 10 pin from both magical and physical for 5 seconds isn't a lot in 10 minutes from now. But 10 minutes ago, as well as the last 10 minutes and continuing here in the 15-minute mark, feels pretty solid. And you have to think on how much that's proccing with every ability Cabrakan has. I mean, it's going to be almost ever present, and it's making it so much easier to burn through, not just Happen, but Caddy, Shootable, Soul Reaper as well, who's someone who's relatively tanky as a Tiamat. And so I think you have to be worried about where Gino is throwing his CC if you're ET. There were a lot of letters at the end of that sentence.
There were not a whole lot of other gods I would say that this item is perfect on, aside from Cabrakan. I mean, literally every ability but his ultimate, I guess passive if you want to include that there, grants some kind of CC. Conditional on the 2 for the stun, have to have the passive stacked up there. But 3 different abilities in his kit can apply it and keep it going. Just the team fight starts up. There it's put to work with that Tremor's great wall hold. Soul Reaper in, and a big Petrify from Griff. Chunks out the health bar of the mage, but those walls are actually a cover for ET to get themselves out of the fight. And it's Gino who might be on the worst end of the trade for the team. He's down to about 10% health. He'll make his way back to the base very swiftly. But everybody else is still up and healthy on both sides. And with the Fury down, it seems to be the end of the fight here.
That would have been a free Fury for Sturdy Artisans if ET just hadn't played the map better earlier and got the objective already. I mean, you do have to use both relics if your Soul Reaper maybe doesn't feel that comfortable, plus the shell in order to get the team out. But I think that's beautiful relic usage from ET in order just to stay alive in a fight that felt like it was a clean engagement from Sturdy Artisans. That wall was just perfect. I should say those walls, and they did so well at locking them down. I'm just thoroughly impressed ET got out of there alive, period. Whether or not they had to limp away doesn't necessarily matter. It should have been a through-and-through win for Sturdy Artisans. So that prolongs things, but it does create this awkward conversation around the Gold Fury, or sorry, it should be Oni Fury. That's spawning, just a few seconds. J-Mac, it's not going to be the easiest thing to defend now that your mid laner, at the minimum, doesn't have a lot of their safety.
Oh, no.
And unfortunately, not shootable.
Got caught inside the cage, and that's an easy pick. But Dharmic Pillars out of Happen will at least slow the disengage down for the Sturdy Artisans. Throw out a Cyclone there from Soul Reaper just to chase him around, but not find any damage afterwards. Relentless One steps up, and Relentless One is eating a lot of damage from this Tiamat. No real protections to their name, just some extra health by that Rune Forge. Oni Fury goes up, and it goes down to the Sturdy Artisans. So they're able to pick themselves up another objective. Keep your eyes up on Pyromancer. That's up in about a minute, and ET is already starting to swarm that side of the map.
Something else I'm going to keep my eyes on, and it's one specific relic, so it's relatively easy to watch over. It's going to be Happen, and it's going to be whether or not this gets upgraded into a Phantom Shell. With how well these walls have been getting placed, I'm starting to think Phantom Shell might be necessary. You get the nice bubble around for your team, which has already been used. Like, thinking back to the last fight, that's exactly how it was used. But then giving them the ability to just escape without having to worry about burning down the objective, that'll give you much more wiggle room in a team fight. Unfortunately, you're going to need that wiggle room maybe even sooner than you would like, because they've already tier 2 tower knocked down. They've got the Oni minions that were pushing up. They're going for a fight on Happen.
They're going to go for the fight, they're going to go for the kill, and they're going to get it. Sino credited for the last hit of the fight. Tier 2 tower in left lane goes down very swiftly thanks to the help of that Frenzy. Tier 2 in mid will go down almost just as quickly, now with everybody grouped up to take it down. Moswell will go back to base. He did pick up a Charon's coin, very interestingly, but it seems to be out of kind of the 20% pen items. Charon's coin seems to be the more favorable one with the Merlin as compared to the Obsidian Shard.
Yeah, being able to bring in, I guess, early on pin, but realistically, that's just the damage numbers. It's one of those things. Charon's coin is not bad by any means. It just happened to be kind of outclassed, I guess is the better way to word it, is there's other items that hit a little harder, a lot faster, and maybe make that big difference. Yeah, I remember, it doesn't even feel like it was that long ago. It might have been the beginning of last year where Charon's coin was like the starter choice for mid laners. It's good damage. You get that with the Rod to Tahuti plus the flat pin already online. I think we're about to see Moswell. Yeah, well, kind of that.
Well,
just burn down whatever stands in his way.
Gino misses a couple of those little stuns there, just kind of flapping his arms at them, but Pyromancer goes down. And that's just the damage that Merlin brings out. The double flat pen plus 30% pen between the Rod Tahuti and that Charon's coin. So not many things are going to be tanky up against this Merlin specifically. And probably not even the Fire Giant. Started up by all 5, and you can see it's already down to nearly half health just with one rotation from Moswell. Transforms into the Ice Stance. Fire Giant stands no chance. And that one is down instantly. Shootable has to use the beads from the ultimate out of Relentless One. Happen is here, but Happen is caught out. No Phantom Shell yet, and no way to get out of that cage. That is a clean kill from Moswell, and make it a second one. Soul Reaper jumps back in, and Griff shows him why you probably shouldn't do that. Caddy makes a swift retreat with the Assassinate. Big Dark Portal almost takes out Relentless One and Sino, but now it's Little Richie and Shootable both on the run from this tier 2 tower. The Sturdy Artisans get the fire, they get 2 kills, and they sweep up the last tower on the map.
Little Richie might not be safe. Moswell's going for more. He finds
him
with the ice. I mean, that's just good. Look, you get the kill, you get the zone, you get the tower, you get pretty much everything your team would have wanted there. Now you get to knock on the door of the Phoenix. There's only 2 people up to try and defend this, and one of them's in the purple buff.
Happen is up in about 3 seconds, though, so no reason to try and push towards the Titan just yet. It will just be right side Phoenix and tower so far in this Fire Giant siege. On the side of Sturdy Artisans, 8,000 plus gold up for the team, and that 8,000 still matters. I mean, we're sparing out 1,500-ish to each member of the team plus. I mean, we're starting to get to near 2K up for every single player, and you can see that reflected in the builds here, Gormaz. I mean, a full Rod of Tahuti up for Moswell, where Soul Reaper is trying to finish the Soul Reaver right now.
That feels like a tongue twister. Soul Reaper buying the Soul Reaver. It's not, but it feels like it should be. That's my wonderful insight, my very helpful insight in that conversation. No, yeah, I mean the itemization, the gold, you can really start it seeing to take effect. I mean, you had mentioned it, in the mid lane, but look at specifically support. Gino straight up has an item over Happen, has one more full item. Maybe you could argue that Stone of Binding's a half item, and therefore he's only half an item ahead. But either way, it's more than what he's been able to pick up, and now if Relentless One had lived there, they would have been in a much more healthy position to try and continue. Relentless One go taken down. An unfortunate time to get picked off. You lose your Magi's, which will be back shortly after you respawn, but a minute without your solo laner who has been diving, who's been super aggressive and controlling in the backline, this opens up a conversation for ET to defend this Phoenix.
Will be 3 versus 3 for now. Soul Reaper making their way back in. Dharmic Pillar dropped down. Sino, about a third of their health bar, but Moswell finds a kill up against Caddy. Walking through the jungle, walls come out. Gino traps a couple of them, but not quite enough. And now that Moswell has rejoined the fray, it's now a 4v4. The Phoenix is already at half health. They may not even wait for a full minion wave to come through.
Yeah, no matter what, you're still looking at 2 Hunters with Fire Giant. This thing is going to burn fast.
And the only thing burning right now is shootable. That is a 10% health RDO on the way back to the base. Sino eats some damage from that Primordial Onslaught. The stun is good up against Soul Reaper. Jumps on in, and that'll be the last thing that Soul Reaper gets to do. Moswell finds Richie, and still going for more in the backline. It's a double kill for the mid laner. Shootable goes down, and no one left to defend. Game number 2 ends just like that.
I don't even know what to isolate as the problem. I think ET are just as lost as I am here. It's trying to figure it out. You go to kill Moswell. First off, you're not successful. That's twice that game where he gets almost virtually killed and still is able to skirt by with his life and get return damage and find some kills behind it. But then you also have 2 Hunters that are just barreling through your health bars. I think Sino showcases a lot of what this Scotty is capable of bringing towards the end of that. We see a lot more pressure specifically from him, a lot of damage that is just getting dished out, shelled out, has a lot of kills. I can't remember the exact KD, but I feel like it was 7 and 3. It just feels like it fits so well for their team. And once again goes to showcase that, is that a pick I'd recommend to anybody else? Absolutely not. But can Sino play it? Yes.
Check mark. Is Sino playing it? Yes. Okay, we can go ahead and pick that one in. Game number 2 is done. We'll take it to a break, and then we'll come back to break down game number 2 right after. Welcome back. Game number 2 has concluded, and so has the set. And it's Sturdy Artisans coming out on top over ET. They'll move themselves along a little bit further in the winner's bracket. But Gormeister, game 2 definitely a lot closer compared to game number 1. Game 1 was a blowout by like 5 minutes. It was already like a 3,000-4,000 gold lead. This time around, kind of sat around that 1,500 gold lead for quite some time before we finally did see the Sturdy Artisans kind of break out.
I think Shootable was on a god that was much more capable of kind of at least holding Relentless One at bay. And what we really got to see, and I think this was the real difference maker, even though, Grand Scheme maybe wasn't as much, but it was actually Caddy playing Loki. And the reason it feels like that changes so much is because Sino, and you can see here, does a ton of damage, but we're, jumping 19 minutes into the game. Caddy early on was able to find pressure, finds that first blood over in the duo lane with some really beautiful ganks, but more importantly, has better clear and better early game fight up against the Scotty than what we saw out of the Nemesis. The Nemesis in game 1 didn't really have any room to stand, and unfortunately for Caddy, that ended up collapsing for them. So a lot more jungle presence for them. Unfortunately, it still led to moments like this where Moswall, last time it was a 5-on-1 and he walks away with his life and the entire team comes back and gets a deicide. This time, it's like 4-on-3 and he just almost dies and he burns everybody and makes sure their lineage ends with them.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect showcase as to just what Merlin can do. And this is the fight right at the end, and this is kind of where it turns sour.
This is a huge pick
for ET. Being able to pick up Caddy was monstrous here for Moswall. Not only does he get a credit for the kill, which every Merlin wants to make sure they can kill a Loki. It's the best feeling in the world when you can kill an enemy Loki who's just been giving you trouble all game. But finding that one solo pick by himself, no extra CC needed, no teammates to pop through and shells and all that other stuff, he just tapped him and took him out there, and that led his team to be able to have the advantage in that 4v4 fight on that left Phoenix.
This is so how impressive what Sturdy Artisans were doing and how I want to say like flashy Griff, Moswall, and Sino to an extent were. I didn't even realize that Relentless One had a negative KDA. He was 1-6 this game. It was a lot and again, that goes to showcase it. A lot easier to handle the Bastet when you had the RDO over there, when you had a jungle that was more than capable of. But you can see where the damage really starts to stand true. You get almost 16k from Little Richie, a little over 14k there from Soul Reaper, but you get 21k out of Moswall, and that's only damage versus the gods. That doesn't include the burn he had on like the Fire Giant, the Pyromancer we saw that got burned away, the Fury. I think there was only one Fury that Sturdy Artisan started up that he was able to help with, but it's just those moments that damage really showcased itself. And I think that who else is going to be doing that? Like, I know Benny Q plays a lot of Merlin. We've seen a few of it, throughout the SPL, but realistically, Moswall it feels just hand in hand in my mind with this god. And it played so perfectly for them.
I mean, not many mid lane mages can take only 2,700 damage over the course of the game. It was literally that one fight by the red buff, and then that Phoenix fight is the only time that Moswall really ever felt like he was in danger here. But let's take a look at the schedule and the bracket here to kind of see what we still have for the remainder of our day. That was set number 3. Another 2-0 out here. This one goes to the Sturdy Artisans. We have Leoncitos versus DDD coming up next for our 4th and final match of today on this winner's side of the bracket. Then we'll see more of the NA teams on Sunday for their second half going up through the remainder of the bracket. Remember, it's 16 teams out here. If you don't know how many teams 16 is, we'll take a look at it on our bracket out here. Sturdy Artisans move on. They'll face the winner of our next match over in the qualifier round. Unfortunately for ET, they move on into the loser's bracket where they're met there with a Little S Pog and Jazzy Jaguars, and then the loser of this next game will meet ET, where one more loss in the loser's bracket will mean disqualification from your chances, at least I should say, to get into the SCC. Not disqualification from the SCC. I mean, I guess technically it's disqualification from the SCC, but it's more so your chances kind of get nullified.
Yeah, you won't make it this time around, right? You have to do it whatever future opportunities present themselves. Right. And so, it's one of those things where, especially from what we've seen out of some of these teams, I think that there's a good chance. Like, ET is a team that realistically, after what they just did in Game 2, I think has a lot of promise, and I'm interested to see what they'll be able to do down in the lower bracket. But most importantly, I think watching what that team is going to be capable of, whether they make it into the SCC or if they have to stick around for the SOC, I think they're going to be a team to keep your eyes on. And there's, like you said, there's so many good teams in this bracket, dude. It's going to be so difficult. But it's top 6, so ultimately there's still a lot of spots to try and make it into the SCC, and I have a lot of hopes for a lot of these teams. Because of what we've seen out of them so far, I think it's going to make it a very interesting couple of weeks.
Been a lot of excitement so far in our first 3 sets. We still got one more to go. Make sure you stick around after the break when we bring you game number 4.